Okay. For the record, just tell me what your name is.
My name is Joyce Johnson.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
78.
So what year was you born?
1939.
Okay. Where did you and your family live when you were growing up?
We lived in Bracken County.
So was this?
That's around Brooksville.
Okay. So it was a small town, right? Kind of.
Yes.
Can you describe it to me, like
the town?
Yeah, what kind of?
It's just a very small town. There's a courthouse there, and a high school, and several grocery stores, and a post office, and a bank, and some gas stations, and several churches, and they had a swimming pool when I was growing up, but it's no longer there.
Yeah, Jody took me down and showed me that swimming pool. Yeah. It was just a big field now.
Yeah.
So, well, when you were a kid, what kind of stuff did you do to have fun?
Oh my, we lived out in the country, and there wasn't any other kids around where we lived, so we just had to make our own fun, and we used to play softball, and when their school was going on, some other kids would come home with us, and we'd have enough to play softball, and we did all kinds of things. We'd climb trees, and we had a playhouse we built up in a tree. Well, my brother basically built it, and we did, we made up our own games and just did things like that.
Well, more about when you got to be a teenager, was there like certain things that the teenagers in the town did, or places that you hung out then, or?
Well, when we were dating, we used to go to Aberdeen. There was a Frisch's over there, and we would drive around. All the kids would just drive around and around that Frisch's, and look to see who's there and everything like that. And we'd go to basketball games in the winter, and things like that.
Yeah,
just simple things.
What about like the older people? Like, you know how around here now, a lot of older people hang out at Dairy Queen. Or was there a place in your town where older people hung out?
Restaurants. They'd hang out and drink coffee, talk.
Well, that was another thing I was going to ask you is what kind of restaurants were around back then.
Well, they a lot of them served basically just country cooked food. And when I got out of the high school, one of the first jobs I had, I worked at a drugstore, and they also served meals, and they'd have specials on certain days, like roast beef and gravy and mashed potatoes would be on Wednesday, and Friday they always had fish and coleslaw and baked beans, stuff like that, And but the restaurants back then, they served a lot of hamburgers, of course, but hamburgers and fries, but they had a lot of home cooked food too.
And what would you say the biggest difference is between then and now, as far as restaurants go?
Well, now they have, I think they only have one restaurant that serves country food, and they have a pizza place there, and like a creamy whip place, and then you can get some food at the gas stations, but that was about it. They don't have much there now like they did when I was young.
They have that. I think that it's Brooksville that has that snappy tomato pizza. That's yeah. Me and Jody went there. That's a good pizza. Yeah. Well, it's kind of about the same, but what are some things that have changed about your hometown throughout the years? As far as stuff they had then that they might not have now, or
they had a big two big dry goods places where they sold clothes. You could go buy clothes there and shoes, and they're no longer there. There's nothing like that there. But they have built a new dollar store out at the edge of town where you can get get a lot of different things. They have a few clothes. But a lot of that, and there was a dime store, 5 and 10 cent store there then,
Yeah.
and it went out of business. And there was just a lot of good places like that went out of business.
Yeah.
They had a doctor's office there, and everybody in the county just about went to this doctor, but it's closed up. And of course, he's no longer living, but after he retired, it closed up. It didn't last.
It kind of sounds like where I grew up too.
Yeah,
a little
most of the
bit.
towns were like that, I guess.
Where'd you go to school at?
I went to school, grade school at Western Hills Grade School, and then it had 1 through 9 grades, and then in 10th grade I went to Bracken County High School where I graduated.
How many students were in your school? Was it a big school or little school?
It was I'd say small. I guess you'd call it small. We started out with 120 children in my class when we went there, and only 49 graduated. So less than half of the class. Of course, some of them moved away and graduated other places,
Yeah.
But just ended up with 49. And we were the first class. My class was the first class that graduated black students. We had a boy and a girl. And I knew the girl real well, clear through my lifetime. And she lived in an apartment right behind where I worked at my last job. And I see her a lot. But the boy left the county after graduation and went to Maryland or someplace out on the East Coast.
So you thinking about that, so I guess you lived through seeing stuff like that change, like, where everything was segregated, and then
all of a sudden,
yeah,
it was segregated for a long time up until, just up until a couple of years or so before I graduated.
In your opinion, what do you think now is different about school and how kids are in school and stuff?
They were allowed to discipline children back then. And I remember in the 4th grade that me and 2 other boys liked to talk, and we would do a lot of talking while the teacher was trying to teach. She told us to shut up a time or two, and we didn't. We kept it up, and she come around with a ruler and held our hands back. Just real hard with a ruler. And boy, they would get fired if they did something like that.
Yeah, they would probably get charges against them now.
And the real bad children, boys mainly, the principal would take a paddle to them. They was allowed to do that.
Well, yeah, that's a lot different now than now.
We did have one lawsuit where our principal whipped a girl, or paddled her. I said whip, but he paddled her with a paddle. And her father came after the principal that night.
Oh.
And he wasn't allowed to touch her ever again after that. They had a little lawsuit. He didn't lose his job or anything, but.
Well, did they change the rules for the whole school, or was it just that girl?
Just that girl.
That's wild.
As far as I know, they kept on paddling until everything, all this stuff went to Supreme Court and all that.
Well, I remember up until I was still in 5th grade, they were still paddling in school, so it hasn't been that long ago when they took it out.
Yeah.
Describe it. Well, you already kind of did that, but okay, like a typical day in your house as a kid. What roles did your family members have?
Okay, I had 2 sisters and 1 brother besides myself, and my daddy milked cows, and we'd have to get the cows up for him, and it was my job after school that I had to go get the cows and round them up and bring them into the barn. And I had to walk a long, it would take me a good hour or something most nights to find them and bring them in, And that was my job. And then my 2 sisters would help my daddy milk. I never did have to milk, but I had to go get the cows. And I never really did learn to milk cows like they did, but they would help my dad milk cows. My brother was youngest, so I don't remember him doing too awful much. He might have to carry in the firewood, you know. My dad would split up the firewood during the day, and we'd all have to take turns. We had a big screened-in back porch, and under we had a big bench that went clear across the end of it, and we would have to stack the wood up under that bench, you know, and we had to get up a whole lot so it would be sure to last a while, because we didn't have any heat other than a wood stove.
Yeah, that's kind of was a big thing.
Yeah,
for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of next thing I was going to ask you. It kind of goes with it, but what do you think has changed as far as like family structure goes? What might be considered, like a normal family, or how you had to work so hard and maybe.
Well, my mother worked outside the home. She worked in a factory in Falmouth, Kentucky, a blue jean factory where they sewed blue jeans, and we would have to take turns getting supper. The girls did. That was their job. We had to have supper, and of course, girls don't have to do that nowadays. And we'd have to iron our own clothes. Mom always washed on Saturdays. We'd fill the clotheslines. We had a fence. We'd hang all the old jean overalls on the fence and things like that. And we just had a lot of clothes, to do on Saturdays. And us girls would have to iron our clothes. And in those days, we sprinkled our clothes down and wrapped them up real good and put them in a something and a towel or something, put them in the refrigerator because it was easier to iron them if they were cold and cool, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, we always did that. You could keep it in, if you didn't get done, you could keep them in there. It wouldn't hurt them.
Wow, that's interesting. That's something I had never heard about ironing, which,
now,
of course, I haven't done much ironing.
When I was pretty small, on Saturdays, we didn't have a electric. I think when we first moved to our last farm, and we'd have to go down on Saturdays and get a big block of ice, and we had an ice box. My dad would chop it down, so it'd fit in that ice box. And we always had to do that every Saturday.
So that was the refrigerator, right? The ice box, is that,
no,
or is that something different? Oh, so
it wasn't electric, see. It was just a big thing, like it looked like a cabinet of some sort, but it was insulated real thick and it had walls of galvanized steel inside.
So I'm just sitting here thinking about icebox cakes or pies or whatever. Heard of that before? That's probably where that came from.
That probably
from
way back then.
Yeah. Well, what are a few items that you've seen become normal household items that are in every home now? That's been invented in your lifetime that maybe everybody didn't have. Well, like a refrigerator is one thing, you know.
Telephone for one thing. We did not have a telephone. No time ever when I was growing up. Even later on in life, Mom and Dad never had a telephone. But my dad wouldn't have it. He wouldn't allow it. And televisions. We didn't have a TV until I was up maybe high school before we ever got a TV.
Wow.
And my dad loved wrestling, though. And on Saturday nights, we'd go to my uncle's and watch wrestling. About every Saturday night. We probably wore them poor people out. And my dad and his brother, they'd yell and scream and carry on. They loved that wrestling. So we lived down kind of low where you couldn't get TV reception, but as soon as they could get it, they got a TV. And I'm trying to think of something else. The telephones.
Well, I had examples because two things I remember, or three things, is the microwave, and then the VCR, and then DVD players.
Oh, yeah. No,
that's stuff I've seen.
Oh, we didn't have none of that. No. We had a radio.
Where did your family shop for groceries at?
Well, there was a little country store. we got most of our groceries there. It was up on top of the hill from where we lived, about 3 or 4 miles, and we'd get bread and milk and flour and meal, all that kind of stuff there. And but like I say, after I got bigger, we went to Maysville, and Mom would go to Kroger's, or there was another store there. A&P store used to be in Maysville. We'd either go there or Kroger's to get groceries.
That kind of goes in. Where did you shop for things like school clothes and stuff?
You really don't want me to tell you that. There used to be a secondhand store in Maysville.
I still shop there,
which
so.
is a Goodwill now. And most of our clothes came from there. We got new coats, and new shoes. But a lot of our clothes came from the secondhand store, they called it then. They didn't call it Goodwill then.
Yeah, I wouldn't be dressed without Goodwill, so.
Yeah, there was a big, seemed to be like a big dime store, and they sold clothes and things too. And we did get some of our clothes in Maysville there. We had to go to Maysville.
Did you ever order from catalogs like Sears or?
Yes, my mom used to order from Montgomery Ward or Sears and Roebuck.
Oh yeah, that's the one.
That was 2 stores. It was called Sears and Roebuck then. It's just called Sears now. Roebuck sold out later. And those were the 2 main big stores that we bought from.
And who was the president when you was born or when you was growing up?
I have no idea.
Who do you remember, like, when you were little? Do you know?
Harry Truman.
I don't know. I don't know who was president when I was born either, but I remember Ronald Reagan because I was a little kid. I remember seeing him, But
now Ronald Reagan was a Republican, but he was one of my favorite
presidents. He is my favorite. Yeah. He's always I think because I remember him when I was little, seeing him on TV and stuff. Well, after you did get a TV, what kind of shows did you watch on TV?
Country music. I remember. What was Hee Haw?
Yeah.
No, it was called Midwestern Hayride back then.
No.
Yeah, because it was local out of Cincinnati. Bonnie Lou, and Marion Spellman, and I don't know, different ones. Ruth Lyons had a good show. I went to her show a couple of times in Cincinnati, and also Paul Dixon. He had a funny show, but they'd have guests on there. And I got to see Zsa Zsa Gabor at his show. I never will forget. Her hair was real pretty in the front, but when she turned around, the back of her hair was awful. It looked like she just got out of bed. Looked like she'd slept on it.
Well, she forgot to fix the back.
She was a beautiful lady, though.
Yeah, I remember her too. I remember seeing her a little bit,
Yeah, she had 2 sisters, Ava Gabor, and there was another one, I don't remember. 3 of them.
How many channels did you have to choose from?
3.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
5, 9, and 12. I remember as a kid. And they were all out of Cincinnati, I think. And Nick Clooney, he used to be on some of the shows that I watched. He now lives in Augusta. He's the father of George Clooney.
Oh yeah, we was down in Augusta and we was trying to figure out which house was theirs one day. We went down there by the river and
he don't live down by the river. He lives on 4th Street.
Oh well, that's what it said. Well, we was just following the sign. So
my sister showed me one time where he lived, and his daddy really was kind of poor. He didn't have much money, even though he had a good looking job. Ended up that some woman gave him the house in Augusta.
Yeah, we'll have to go back down there and try to find that because I thought that was interesting.
I'll have to ask Wanda again. Now it's possible that he might have moved, from that first house. I don't know.
I think I don't know. I think it said Rosemary Clooney Avenue or something maybe, but it was down by the river, and then there was these two great big brick houses that were kind of side by side. They looked kind of like they were made together, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
didn't know. I don't even know why we thought that was there. Maybe Jody had thought it was
Yeah,
there,
I got a
but
friend, a woman that I worked with. She worked in Maysville in another apartment, but she lives right on Front Street in a big, beautiful house. And the water has gotten in her house. I don't see why she stays there. But you know, when the river, they don't have a flood wall.
yeah.
And when the river gets up, it covers that whole town just about.
We went across on that ferry there in
Yeah.
Augusta, and I was wondering about that too, because it's. I bet a lot of people used to use that more than now,
Oh,
don't
yeah,
they?
they did.
Um,
It's a quick way for people from Augusta or any place in that county to get across to Ohio. You know, if they're going to some other place in Ohio.
well, I don't know they built the new bridge, but I guess the old bridge has probably been there for years, hasn't it?
It's
Or
about as old as me.
is
I'm
it?
thinking that they either started or completed in 1939.
Mm.
I just heard that, you know, someplace recently.
That's what I was
I'm
wondering.
thinking they might have completed it in 39.
I was thinking about that ferry or whatever. I don't know if they had more, but I was thinking that, before the ferry and stuff, I wonder how people, I guess they just had to get their own little boats and cross the river.
Well,
Or,
they go to Newport. They had bridges down there, see, in Cincinnati.
well,
And
so
if they
yeah.
wanted to go someplace in the high, you know, in the local area, they'd go to Newport and cross over.
Um, let's see. As far as politicians, which I don't pay much attention to them, but have you noticed any change in like how politicians are throughout the years, or how
Yeah,
politics have changed? Or
yeah, they're getting more forward and saying things that they probably should not say, you know.
definitely.
Like, for instance, our president, he's always getting in trouble for saying the wrong thing, you know. Yeah, there's a big change in it.
If you had to, I mean, what would you think compared to maybe when you were a kid, or even as you've been growing up, say when you were my age to now, what's the most dramatic change you think there's been in the world as far as society goes in general, just among people? Or
The gays coming out. I didn't even know what a gay was when I was young. And they called them queers back then. I remember some of the boys in our class calling somebody a queer, you know. But I never knew there was women gays. I mean, I actually didn't really know there was. I didn't know what it meant.
yeah.
I just thought, well, they're odd.
Yeah,
But that among the people, that's the biggest change.
that's big. I guess that would kind of go along with family structure too, because now you do have gay and lesbian
Yeah.
couples raising kids. That probably didn't happen.
And now they're having transgender, you know, and that's really something
um, well, you kind of didn't tell me about your routine, but well, you said your mom worked,
different.
but did you all try to still eat dinner? Did you try to eat dinner together,
Oh,
or did you have a
yes.
routine?
Oh,
Or
no, we always had a meal together. Always, unless one of us wasn't there. Like me, if I couldn't find the cow sometimes, you know, they'd go ahead and eat, and I'd have to eat when I come in. But yeah, we always had our meals together at the table. Of course, we didn't have a TV to get in front of.
well, when your kids were little, is that something that you guys always did, or?
Yeah, yeah, we did. We always ate at the table.
I already knew the answer to that. I figured anyways. Just, because we were talking about that the other day, and I was thinking that's something I strive for, but I never get there. So it seems like that's something that's changed a lot too. It's everybody's always go, 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 and just
This is a fast generation now. I mean, you know, it wasn't that way when I was a kid because there wasn't a lot of automobiles like there is today. I mean, basically everybody in our neighborhood probably had a car, but Uh, you know, they didn't drive fast when they went out. They weren't in a hurry.
What about, well, with cars? Like, what's changed with them? Do you think? I mean, I know they've changed. I don't know
Yeah.
really how you would.
Well, they make them. They build them to go faster and faster, and they build them not to last.
Yes,
And
definitely.
those old cars would go forever and ever. And they were simple. The motors were simple made, and you could fix about anything. Anybody that knowed anything about a motor could work on them.
Yeah, that's nearly impossible
And
now.
yeah,
Yeah, they're even making cars now with the new ones I've seen are coming out with Wi-Fi in them, so you can have
uh-huh.
internet from your
Oh
car.
yeah. But I heard them discussing that on the news the other night, and they said that could be dangerous. They talk about texting and everything, because you have to look at
Yeah,
certain things. That could be dangerous.
yeah, I seen a thing that said texting and driving was more dangerous than drinking and driving.
6 times more dangerous.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
what.
that man
Yeah, that
says
man
on
on
there.
TV says. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think the internet has changed people? Do you or and
Well,
having smartphones and everything?
people don't call one another like they used to. They just
Right.
text mostly now, or they just don't really talk to one another. Me and my
Yeah.
sister was talking about that the other night. She said this guy we know that lives in California, he just texts his sister all the time, and it makes her husband mad. He said he could pick up the phone and call her and let her hear his voice. You
Well,
know,
yeah, that's a big
that's what
difference.
she would like to hear, just hear his voice. So he was kind of upset about
Well, did you ever think you would really be able to see somebody while you call them? I was
that.
talking about that the other day to
Yeah,
somebody.
I know they always said it was going to happen, but I never thought it would.
Yeah, we thought that was some
Out,
Jetsons or
yeah,
something.
just out of place.
Do you remember when your kids were little, any shows they watched or anything growing up? Or
Watched a lot of cartoons. I remember. And yeah, they watched a lot of. I can't remember exactly the shows, but when I talked to them and mentioned certain old shows, oh yeah, I remember that. They'd say, I remember watching that.
do you remember any? I guess superheroes maybe that was. I'm trying to think of one. I can't remember it either, but
Superman.
yeah, that's he's
Or
been
are you
around for a
talking
long
about
time.
somebody real?
No, like or well, yeah, either one. Just anybody. I don't know, like Superman. He's been around for a long time,
Yeah.
maybe, or um,
Superman, and Batman, and Wonder Woman. I remember all three of those that they liked.
um. Did you visit with your other family a lot? Did it? I mean, did you
Well,
guys have reunions or?
like I say, we went to my daddy's brothers on Saturday night. We watched wrestling and everything. No, we didn't do family reunions much. In fact, I've got first cousins that I've never even met. But they don't. They live. Some of them lives around Washington D.C., but I think some of them moved on to Florida, and they were on my mom's side of the family. And a lot of my daddy's brothers' children. We've seen them when we were little, but we drifted away.
Yeah,
We
kind of.
just drifted away. We didn't. People didn't have reunions so much back
That's something my family's never done
then.
either. We never
Yeah,
did that. But
a lot of families don't.
did you ever go on vacation as either a kid or even as an adult? What's
Not as
do you ever like to go
not
on
as a
vacation
kid.
or?
No, we didn't know what a vacation was. We thought that was for rich
We
people.
did too.
We said, well, they got money.
Yeah, I must have money going somewhere.
But after we married, well, me and Leonard, we went to Florida one time, and we took my mom down there. I have a half sister that lives down there. At least I think she's still living. I don't really know because she don't keep in touch with us.
Mm.
But anyway, we did go down to Florida, and where else did we we just took basically local vacations, like down in the Smokies,
Yeah.
places like
Well, is there anything else you can think of that
that. Are
has
you through,
changed?
Nubba?
Or, yeah, we got through them all. So, I don't know. I couldn't really think of any more questions, but
Oh, well, we raised tobacco. You know, my daddy milked cows and we raised tobacco. And we had basically our own meat. He had
mm,
hogs, and, every fall when it got cold, they would kill hogs. Some of the neighbors would come in and help, and they'd dress out the meat and everything. We didn't eat beef so much then. It was mostly just hogs and chickens. My mom would order chickens every spring,
yeah,
and we'd have at least 100. She'd kill at least 100, and she had big. We had a big freezer, after we got bigger, and she put them in the freezer.
that's something I remember doing too. My dad killing hogs and stuff, but that's something you don't see a lot of nowadays either. Really, people having their own
Yeah.
animals for meat or
No.
anything.
Yeah, and we had a big garden. We'd have one down by the house and one up on the hill where our tobacco was, and Mom would just can all summer long.
Yeah,
She'd can tomatoes, and then she'd make tomato juice. Then she'd can all these vegetables, and she used to cold pack her sausage. I don't know if you ever heard of
no, I haven't heard that.
that. Then she'd fix it all up like spices in her sausage and everything, like they do today. And she'd fry it down in an iron skillet. Then she had these big half-gallon canning jars, and she'd, cook enough to get enough for cooking in that. And I think she could cook maybe 6 half gallons at a time, and put it in cold pack it just like you
Mm,
would can anything else. And it would keep all winter. Oh, she'd put the grease. She'd pour the grease down in the jar, and the grease would be surround the sausage and kind of keep it.
that's
What you'd
interesting
say.
though. Yeah,
And then in the wintertime, she'd get out a jar of that, and we'd eat on that. It was sealed,
yeah. So that's something people do a lot
that
different through the years
you
too.
never hear of that today.
No, that for sure. That's something. I'm glad you brought that up. I hadn't thought about
Yeah,
that.
something new.
Yep.
Because they don't do it. And we just had. She didn't have a pressure cooker for a long time. She just had a big granite cooker that she bought that had wire racks, and you could lift them out when you were done. And she even had a big iron kettle on a frame out in the yard. She built a fire under that and get the water real hot. And she would even, cold pack or can things out there. She'd when she'd get her stuff ready in the jars and put it in the water and get it water, to boil before she'd put it in. And then she had to keep a lot of wood under it. She'd cook it for so long, she'd time it. She'd know how long to cook it,
That's
can it. But it was done outside, And
that's interesting. I like to. I wish I could go back sometimes and see stuff like that. But
yeah.
it reminds you how.
And we had a meat house too, and we had a woman in the neighborhood that knew how to put the right amount of spices and things on the hams and the side meat and all that kind of stuff. And then they would put it in a smokehouse. They put it in sacks,
Oh yeah.
like cheesecloths, sacks, and put it in that, and Daddy would hang it in the meat house.
Most people just go to the grocery store nowadays, but there is a lot of work that it seems like people worked a lot harder than they do
did,
now.
But you didn't have to buy all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but you had to put a lot of work into it and a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
probably appreciated it more.
What else did you have to do?
Well, yeah, I know.
You didn't have TV to watch or anything. No
Yeah.
place to go.
I guess that's true. Well, I thank you for doing the interview for me.
Brings back old memories. I brought brought up things I hadn't thought about for a long time.
I like hearing about it too.
Yeah.